Makoto Fujimura, an ordinary office worker, lived his days in a repetitive routine. Though his job was going fine, he had no real ambition. He felt a gaping emptiness in his heart. Alone in his apartment, his only solace was the radio app Radio Link. Its distinct format featured a DJ reading episodes submitted by listeners. Every night, Makoto tuned in as part of his routine.
All right, it's time once again for our popular segment, Radio Link Memories, where we introduce our listeners' stories and recollections.
The DJ's cheerful voice softened the stillness of the night.
Today's message is from someone going by the handle Milk Tea. Let's see what this is all about.
As Makoto listened casually as usual, there came a moment when he suddenly felt drawn in.
I found myself recalling the only boyfriend I ever dated back in high school.
That single line captured Makoto's attention.
Back then, I didn't want to stand in the way of his future, so I chose to break up with him.
Hearing the story, Makoto found himself naturally listening more closely.
At the time, I truly believed it was the right choice, but even now, part of me wonders if it really was.
Something about those words squeezed Makoto's heart. No specific names or places were mentioned, yet the story tugged at him somehow. It reminded him of his own high school girlfriend, Yoko Shimizu. But Yoko had abruptly moved away during college due to family reasons. Her parents had suddenly gone overseas, and she left without leaving any contact information. He had no idea where she was, so he locked that memory away as time passed. And then came the decisive part.
On New Year's Day, on our way home from visiting the shrine, we stopped by a game center. I said, I really want that plushie, and he spent all his New Year's gift money to win it for me.
In that instant, Makoto's memories rushed back in vivid detail. Yoko Shimizu. Over 10 years earlier, back when he was a high school student, he recalled going to a game center on New Year's Day to get a plushie. He could see her happily clutching the plushie, smiling. It was an unforgettable moment for him. Was this pure coincidence or something else? The next day, even while working, Makoto couldn't stop thinking about Milk Tea's segment from the radio. As he tried to organize documents, his hand paused, recalling a line from last night's broadcast.
Was that just a coincidence? Or maybe...
He tried to focus on the papers before him, but his mind kept drifting. By the end of the workday, he was desperate to find out more. Once home, Makoto opened the radio app as usual. But there was no new message from Milk Tea that night. Disappointed, he found a single choice forming in his mind.
Should I be the one to send a message? But what if all of this is just coincidence?
He picked up his smartphone and opened the app. Yet, when he tried to type a message, his fingers wouldn't move.
Even if I send something, then what? If it gets read, but she's not really Yoko.
But the growing feeling, I don't want to end up regretting doing nothing, began overpowering him.
If this truly is her, I might never get such a chance again.
Resolving himself, Makoto began typing.
That was a lovely story about your high school sweetheart. I have a similar memory.
When he finished writing, he stared at the screen, motionless for a few moments. Yet something pushed him to tap send. In that moment, his heart brimmed with a faint hope and an equal measure of fear. After sending the message, anticipation and anxiety swirled in Makoto's chest. He went to bed that night, thoughts lingering on how the DJ might handle his submission. The next day at work, he couldn't stop wondering if his message had gotten through. Even in meetings, part of his mind drifted back to the radio.
Will the DJ read it? Is it even Yoko in the first place?
At lunchtime, while co-workers chatted, Makoto slumped forward on his desk, trying to calm himself. His thoughts kept returning to the words he sent, imagining how it'd be if they were read on air. That night, he turned on the radio as usual.
Now we have our popular segment, Radio Link Memories. We have tons of messages tonight. Let's begin.
Makoto listened with tense anticipation, unlike any other night.
Tonight, we have a message reacting to last night's post from Milk Tea.
Makoto's heart gave a powerful jolt.
It was such a lovely story about a high school sweetheart. I have a similar experience. I once used all my New Year's money to get a plushie. If she's truly the same person, I hope she's happy now.
Hearing his own words broadcast, Makoto held his breath.
That's quite sweet. Could this be coincidence? Or maybe something faded, who knows? Milk Tea, if you're listening, please send us another message.
The DJ wrapped up and Makoto exhaled deeply. His chest swelled with a small hope. There was a chance she heard his message, and that was enough to give him optimism. The next day, at work, that feeling from the radio lingered in Makoto's mind. Did she hear it? Or was it all just a random crossing of paths? He kept wondering. With an hour left before lunch, he glanced at the clock, pausing his work to gaze outside.
What if she responds? But no use dwelling on it.
He forced himself to refocus, but every time he tried, the fluttering in his chest grew stronger. That evening, after finishing his shift, Makoto came home and switched on the radio without delay. Though it was normally a way to unwind, tonight he listened with anxious excitement.
We've got a ton of messages again tonight. Among them is a response from Milk Tea.
Hearing that, Makoto's heart leapt.
I was surprised to hear a similar memory to mine. I never thought someone else shared that experience.
Makoto listened intently, all his senses attuned to the radio.
If you truly are the person from back then, thank you so much for getting me that plushie. It remains a precious memory for me, even now.
At those words, Makoto felt warmth surge in his chest.
Isn't that lovely? Listeners, can you feel that this might not be mere coincidence?
The DJ's voice felt distant as Makoto's mind filled with her words. Perhaps this was no accident. Perhaps it really was Yoko. That night, Makoto was too excited to sleep, compelled to send another message. Though anxious, he toyed with his phone, uncertain whether to write again. What if it's truly her, he wondered. But if it isn't? He replayed the DJ's remarks in his head.
This can't just be a coincidence. They share the same memory. That's practically a miracle.
Those words urged him to act. He simply wanted to say thanks, to know what kind of life she was leading now. Realizing this, he opened the app's post screen once more. And so, the next night's broadcast came.
Everyone, another message from our passionate poster has arrived. Listen up!
Makoto's hands trembled slightly, clinging to his phone.
If you really are the one from my past, I'll never forget how you smiled, clutching that plushie. It's still my most treasured memory. Nothing would make me happier than seeing that smile again.
As he heard his own words echo through the radio, Makoto felt a gentle warmth flooding his heart.
What a heartfelt confession. Listeners, isn't it wonderful to express your feelings so honestly? Milk Tea, please respond to him. We, and I'm sure all the other listeners, hope this message reaches you.
That night, Makoto set his phone down and took a deep breath, hoping for her reply. The next day at work, thoughts of that evening's program kept surfacing, stirring his heart. Memories of Yoko drifted through his mind once more. It had been over 10 years. He first met her in the spring of his second year of high school. With the new class arrangement, they ended up next to each other. She was outgoing, friendly to everyone, and easily befriended an introvert like him. Naturally, they spent more and more time talking. Being around her felt normal, and it warmed his heart. Her smile, the casual chats they shared, everything felt fresh and comforting to him. Then came the day she confessed, looking a bit shy.
Makoto, how about we try going out?
His heart pounded so hard he couldn't speak, a feeling he still remembered. That period became irreplaceable to him. But that happiness didn't last long. In the spring of their third year, Yoko abruptly broke up with him.
I'm sorry, Makoto. Let's end this.
He froze, mind blank. When he demanded a reason, she briefly answered, "I like someone else." That was all. Hurt filled his chest, but he said nothing. Yet from the radio days ago, he realized the real reason she parted ways.
Yoko, you must have been hurting more than I ever knew back then.
Tears quietly slipped down his cheeks before he noticed. One drop fell onto his keyboard, making a faint sound.
I'm sorry, I never realized.
Overcome with regret, he covered his face with his hand. Only now did he grasp how heavy her feelings must have been when she said goodbye. He'd had no choice but to watch her leave, powerless to change anything. That regret gnawed at him. For the next few nights, Makoto tuned in, hoping for Yoko's next message. Maybe tonight, he'd think, a bubble of hope rising, but also fear that there'd be no reply. Each day, a restless anxiety followed him. Yet each time he switched on the radio, a faint spark of hope lit within him, refusing to die out.
Yoko, does any of this really reach you?
On the 6th night, he switched on the radio, heart swelling with the wish that tonight might be the night.
We have a new message from Milk Tea in response to all of this.
That line made Makoto's heart soar.
If you truly are that person, thank you so much for all those wonderful memories. I still treasure them to this day, and I wish you nothing but happiness in your life ahead.
At that moment, it felt like the flame inside him nearly flickered out. She said thank you, words of gratitude, but also a gentle push, as if to keep distance.
So, that's her answer?
A quiet heaviness sank in his chest, but then the DJ broke the hush.
The poster might be feeling pretty down about this message. But folks, I sense real kindness here. It's brimming with compassion for that other person. I suspect Milk Tea might have more left unsaid. Poster, if you're listening, here's what I think.
Makoto closed his eyes.
Sometimes, when people truly care, they can't just leap forward, but that one bit of courage can change the future. We're rooting for your bravery, dear Poster. We believe in that moment your feelings will connect.
Those words jolted Makoto's spirit back to life. He felt the flame inside him, about to die, roar back fiercely.
It's not over. I haven't fully conveyed how I feel.
With resolve, he took a deep breath, grabbed his phone, and typed out a fresh wave of emotion.
Yoko, I felt my heart blaze up when I heard your words. There's something I absolutely, even now, over 10 years later, I can't forget your smile from that day. You being there saved me in ways I can't explain. Hearing your thank you really touched me, but that can't be the end. I want to say thank you in person, just once more. On the same day and time we first visited that cafe so long ago, I'll be waiting. If you come, I'm ready to tell you everything.
Finished typing, Makoto pressed send and let out a long exhale. The cafe in question was the place they'd first gone over 10 years ago, on the second Sunday of January, a day he could never forget. He already knew that same date would fall on this coming Sunday. It felt like fate, that memory stoking the flame of his feelings for her anew. The next night on the broadcast, the DJ again read Makoto's message.
Everyone, our passionate Poster has sent yet another heartfelt letter. This is huge. Don't miss it. Yoko, hearing your words set my heart on fire. There's one more thing I want to say.
Each phrase, broadcast through the radio, ignited a powerful warmth inside Makoto.
Isn't that such straightforward emotion? Listeners, let's applaud someone who can speak so honestly from the heart. Milk Tea, we implore you to consider his words. Moments like these, brimming with sincerity, are too precious to waste. Folks, let's all root for them. This might be a miracle in the making. Our hope is that these two find each other again.
Makoto felt a gentle warmth deep in his chest at the DJ's encouraging words.
Yes, dear Poster, all of us listening want this to work out. Let's believe that reuniting can happen through this show. Miracles can absolutely be born this way.
Overwhelmed by the DJ's passion and support, Makoto whispered softly.
Yoko, I'm trusting you'll come.
Then Sunday arrived. Makoto stood in front of that cafe for the first time in over a decade, taking a deep breath. The familiar chime of the doorbell rang. The warm aroma of coffee inside was just as he remembered. Feeling a bit nervous, he walked to the same table by the window they once shared. Sitting down, his heart hammered uncontrollably.
Yoko, will you really come?
The sounds of conversation and cups clinking drifted around him, but he stared at the table, mind swirling. Memories of Yoko laughing, saying coffee's so bitter as she sipped. Their first date menu, the plushie she held on her lap after they went to the arcade. It all rushed back vividly. Each second the clock ticked past their arranged time, hope mingled with dread. Each sound in the cafe, voices, cups, made him glance toward the door. But the door remained still and closed. Minutes slipped beyond the appointed hour, and his heart sank lower. Trying to dispel his worries, he took one more deep breath. And at that moment, the cafe's bell chimed gently. He instinctively turned toward the entrance. There stood a figure he hadn't seen in over 10 years, someone so familiar.
It's been a long time.
Those few words seemed to silence the entire cafe. Her eyes were slightly shy, yet held a look of relief, accompanied by a tender smile.
Yoko.
No other words formed. Emotions burst in his chest as he gazed at her. Over 10 years apart, and now, finally, they stood before each other again. Their connection, severed by time, had at last brought them back together.